In Management Matters, decisions. On January 20th, the next president will have to make plenty of them right away. That takes planning. This year, there's a great deal of focus, at least in the federal community, on making a smooth transition. But what about decision-making itself? This week, the Partnership for Public Service and the IBM Center for the Business of Government published a new report. Its goal is to help leaders make smart and timely decisions. For more, I'm joined by Tom Fox, Vice President for Leadership and Innovation at the Partnership for Public Service. Tom, let's start with a simple definition. We're talking about decision frameworks. What does that mean? Give us a few examples.
Sure. So when you think about a new federal leader coming into office after an election, there are different types of decisions they'll need to be making. There are decisions that essentially happen the same way every year. Decisions around strategic planning, performance planning, budgets, those sorts of things. Then there are the decisions they face by responding to policy events. Every new administration comes in with a new agenda, and they'll have responsibility for responding to the White House requests for taking action on certain things. And then there are the unanticipated events, the crises, the natural disasters, the terrorist events that they'll be responsible for responding to. So in every single one of those instances, a senior federal official in government will need to have a good idea of how they want to make those decisions well, effectively, and efficiently.
Now, last November, you pulled together a bunch of federal officials, past and present, to talk about effective decision-making. What were some of the key takeaways?
Well, it was a robust conversation. We had current and former officials from the executive branch, the legislative branch. We had experts in the field of good government, and we learned a lot, to say the least. We learned that, too often times administrations don't learn until late in their first administration that they need to put these decision frameworks into place. And so better to start early, even during the transition process, to determine how you want to make those sorts of decisions. The second is to figure out how you're going to gather the data and the multiple perspectives you need in order to make those decisions as effectively as is possible. There are so many different stakeholders in everything that the federal government does. So determining who you need to tap, how you're going to look at that information and make decisions is absolutely critical. And then last but not least is how are you going to use program evaluation data to make sure that you actually have a measure of what the outcomes are and whether you're having the intended results that the decision was after.
And Tom, they also recognize that some federal decision-making processes are broken and need revising. The list includes personnel, technology, and acquisition processes. I don't have to tell you, but a lot of this is rooted in legislation or the lack thereof. What should career executives do in the meantime? Do they bypass rules that don't work, wait for new ones? What?
Well, it's a great question. I think, both the folks in office right now in terms of the appointed officials as well as the career officials, it's good to make sure you have a solid understanding as to what the rules really are. I cannot tell you the number of agencies I've gone into where someone complains about a piece of legislation, a law, a regulation, that when you actually go to the source material, they discover that it's not there. It's an urban legend that's been handed down over time. And so I think for the current folks as well as the incoming folks, it's best to get all the facts out on the table as a starting point. And then I think you are right. There's a limited amount of action that's going to occur between now and the next administration. And so you're best to figure out how you can use those existing frameworks to get things done. And when needed, find workarounds that are legal and appropriate, but workarounds nonetheless.
And you also want leaders to take a big picture approach to decision making. As you just mentioned, data plays a central role. Here's a passage from your report. Agency leaders should also create a central data analytics capability to connect data and programmatic silos. Tom, would this be a new capability or is the foundation already in place?
Well, I think we're seeing the foundation being built in individual agencies. Big data is a trend that's affecting every sector of the economy, and the federal government is no exception to that rule. But the foundation is only being built, and I think what we talk about in the report is really an opportunity to take a look at things not just at an agency by agency level, which we're doing right now, but really looking at things government-wide, and how can we think about what we're tackling not as a group of individual agencies, but a collective really trying to get things done to the benefit of the country. And that will, I think, require a new capacity.
Here's something else. Speed is important here. New administrations have a lot of political capital right out of the gate. They just won an election. It's time to hit the ground running. So how can the next administration maximize that momentum?
Well, I think it really is around establishing some of these decision-making rules. You know, when you think about everything that needs to happen, there is a lot of enthusiasm, there's a lot of excitement, but you can look at every single past administration and find either policy successes or policy failures that are oftentimes as a result of really poor decision-making. And the reality is that a lot of the new incoming folks will have had some experience in managing large organizations. Some maybe even have some experience in the federal government, but many will not. And so really thinking through what and how you need to make those decisions will be vitally important if they want to maximize that opportunity and maintain the momentum for as long as is possible in our current sort of political climate.
It's good to have you on Government Matters. Tom Fox with the
Thank you.
Partnership for Public Service. Thanks.
Thank you, Morris.